Welcome into Floyd Street's finest. He is ESPN Louisville's Phil Baker. I am Jack Grossman. Thanks so much for tuning in. We got a big game tonight. Phil, before we get anything else out of the way, though, because you were so self-conscious about this in the pregame, or I guess before recording this podcast, I'm just gonna go out and call it out. You're sitting in the ESPN Louisville studios. There's all this stuff. I don't even know if this is going to be cropped out or not when I do this post recording. We'll find out. But there's a gigantic poster of John Calipari and Adolph Rupp in the midst of all the other Louisville stuff behind
Look,
it.
I know how Louisville and Kentucky fans are. I'm trying to crop it out, but if it's any consultation, he's been vandalized, the poster. So do with that what you all want. I tried to crop it out. I tried to get an Alonzo Mourning starting lineup thing to kind of shift over this little toy over here from Goodwill to shift over, but he wasn't going to. So you could float it, you could crop it out, but I know how this rivalry works and people will get mad. Also, Evander Holyfield, a little
Oh,
Sega
that's a good
Genesis
one.
game too, maybe that I was put over there. So do with that what you want, but he's not at Kentucky anymore. Damn it. So I can't take all this stuff down. I don't know what you all want me to do.
Who do we think did the vandalism?
I know who did the vandalism. It's either John Salzman, and I know on another one was maybe or maybe not the MOP. Just do with that what you want. That's all I'm gonna say. And it was years ago, and I still haven't thrown it out. So that's all we have with that. You doing all right, buddy? You're looking good. You're glistening down in the ATL.
I'm doing fantastic, man. Just ready for this season to get under the way. We're so close, and we're getting a treat unlike any other that we've seen in college basketball coming up this week with Louisville and Kansas, also Kentucky, Purdue, both on a Friday night in the state of Kentucky. Two major high level, a top 10 matchup in Lexington, a top 15 ish matchup in Louisville between four historically great programs. What else could you be asking for at this point in October?
It's coming here front and center, and it's funny because our buddy EC was on I think some of our local shows here. Eric Crawford, WDRB, does great work for some of the listeners outside of market, and it's funny because Louisville and Kansas is kind of flying under the radar with the high that Louisville fans were on from the Miami game on Friday, but this is still Louisville. It's still Kentucky. I mean, basketball is still king, as elated as many fans are around that. So yeah, I snuck up on us, and we're in for a treat. This isn't South Harmon Institute of Technology. It's actually a really good matchup with Louisville and Kansas. Excited to see the young freshmen out there and Mikel Brown and Darryn Peterson. So should be a fun one. ACC Network, or you can listen to it on 93.9 The Ville.
Yeah, I appreciate the plug. Is it going to be Bob and Paul?
I believe so.
Yeah.
It is, and I believe your favorite Minch, Seth Greenberg on the ACC network. For that, I don't know who's doing play-by-play, but I know Lieberman was actually texting with Greenberg about some stuff. Said he would be in town for that. So look, I mean, Kansas is bringing their full arsenal too. I know some of the Louisville radio people are getting together with some of the Kansas radio people. Obviously, our home office in Kansas City, they have the relationship with KU, so they're going to be in town for that. But yeah, they're treating this like it's a normal game. So when you get these blue bloods together, that's out there. I was actually talking to Curran about this on the Sunday show a couple weeks ago, and it's one of those things with next year Louisville's returning to Allen Fieldhouse. I know you went there to the Cathedral for the IU game. You know me, I'm a home buddy now with the two kiddos and everything. That's when your boy may have to pull in the Phil cards out and be like, "Hey, I haven't asked for anything in a while. Can I get the tour of that cathedral for that exhibition game next year?" So I'm contemplating that and try to go use everything around that. But we shall see a year from now, because I know we're focusing on the game coming up this Friday night that a lot of people are excited about.
Look, I said this at the time when the game was announced. I'm going to say it again. I cannot recommend enough. I know it's an exhibition game. I know it doesn't count for anything in the regular season standings. Go to Fog Allen Fieldhouse for that game next year. Any Louisville fan that's thinking about it, you included, Phil, go to that game. That place is unmatched for anything that I've been to in any sporting event across basketball, football, baseball, the whole shebang. It lives up to every expectation. It is spectacular, and Louisville's going to be there. Yes, it's an exhibition game, but go and experience that place. It's going to be spectacular.
It is as great as in all the amenities that come with the KFC. I'm sorry, I cannot believe it's 15 years old now. They're sending out press releases for that, but look, there's something to be said about like cathedrals of the sport, and Look, Allen Fieldhouse, Cameron Indoor is one of them that is always like in this arms race to upgrade facilities. I've always appreciated like if you got something special at your arena and you have kind of the mystique and history that comes with it and updating that. I know you're a Cubs fan. I know there's some Boston Red Sox fans around here with Fenway and just kind of really leaning into that. I think that's cool. Like when you can get some architects and really kind of upgrade it, but keep its charm. So and all the history that happened there
Yeah.
too. So that's something that I know it really stuck with you after the IU Kansas game a few years ago. That I've like been having in the back of my mind, and it's now we're here. They're coming to the Yum Center first, but definitely hoping that exhibition games comes to fruition next year because I definitely want to go to that.
Yeah, you got to make the trip out there. Anyone that is debating making the trip out there, you have to make the trip out there and hit up some of the barbecue in Kansas City while you're at it. That I know our good friend Jason Anderson knows all the spots out there there to to be able to get the lay of the land out there. Really fun trip out there to Kansas City and Lawrence. But that's a year away. We have a fantastic matchup coming up Friday night in the KFC Yum Center. And you said it, man. It feels like a throwback with Mikel Brown, Darryn Peterson, of two five-star, top-rated point guards duking it out. It's been a minute since we've seen something like this. Two guys that are probably going to be top five NBA draft picks. In the era of you have to get old and stay old, all the transfer portal, all that stuff, and both these teams have used the transfer portal a lot and effectively, I might add. But the headliner is the 2 point guards, the two freshmen, the two youngsters, the two guys that are going to be hearing their name called very early. The NBA draft next April does, or next June. It does feel like a bit of a throwback in that sense.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've talked about it when you were on our shows here at ESPN Louisville. It's interesting to me, especially in the era of just the arms race of what happened with John Calipari in all those years ago with all the draft picks that were there, and then now you're trying to kind of figure out like what's the best route. Like when you look at the makeup of a roster and team, still kind of cool to get the 5 star and the Burger Boys too. Like that still matters. Although the transfer portal is king. It was funny. Before we got on here, I was looking at some of the just Kansas stuff. Hashtag prep we were doing, and one of the things that the social media team did for KU is Bill Self, who Jason Anderson has thoughts about whether or not his hair is in fact real. They did something where they were going like in this portal thing, and it was like a big cardboard box, and they were going back and they were looking at all the great players that came from here. And it's like, well, and they were having fun with it. They kind of, do the summary of the overall thing, but it's like, is it the freshman or is it going through the portal the best way to win? It's funny. It was a good job by their creative team. But in this day and age of trying to figure out that Rubik's Cube of what works best, obviously, Louisville crushed it in the portal in terms of what roster they did with what they were losing versus what they were bringing in. And it doesn't help when look, I don't care what you say, especially with everything that's transpired. And we're not going to look on the past. That was something that I wanted to do, moving forward. Whenever I was on with you, I feel like so many times we looked backwards and not forward. This is something that with Mikel Brown, it's a message, and I think to the sport that like, hey, it's okay to go there, and things are okay now in this day and age, and you can still be successful. And if everything goes according to plan, with a lot of the draft experts and what I think all the basketball bennies are out there anticipating for somebody Mikel Brown, you're going to have a pretty good season in terms of seeing your name on the ticker and kind of being a talking point of the sport. And obviously, after with Chucky Hepburn and Rain Smith, and what they were losing and Terrence Edwards, it looks like they've been able to kind of fix, not even fix is the right word, make up what they were losing in the portal, at least on paper.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the backcourt. I mean, Louisville very well might have the best backcourt in the country. I mean, that's not new news between McNeely, Mikel Brown, obviously, Ryan Conwell from Xavier, Woolley as well. Louisville's deep, diverse, and a lot of guys that can shoot the ball and can initiate offense and do so many different things well, push the pace. They're going to play a lot faster than they did last year because they have the bodies to do that. And
Right.
they just, quite frankly, especially after the Corin Johnson and Casem Prior injuries, just didn't have the wherewithal, the bodies to play as fast as Pat Kelsey wants to. And they're going to be able to do that this year with playing 9, 10, 11, maybe even 12 guys rotating in and out in that rotation. And it all starts with Mikel Brown in that front court. It's going to be this is such a great litmus test for Louisville on so many different levels because this isn't the most heralded Kansas team that we've seen during the Bill Self era. There's a lot of question marks around them. We'll get to some of that to where I think Louisville has an edge on the defensive end, actually to where they can kind of expose some a couple things that Kansas needs to prove on their end. That's kind of holding them back from being a top 15, top 20 team to a top 5 Final Four contender.
Right.
But Kansas defensively, you look at the team they've built, they have one player on their in their rotation that's under 6'4". That's Marco Jackson, who's a former 5-star recruit, who's uber athletic and great defender, really really fast. Hasn't proven it as a shooter, but has all the intangibles and everything that you want athletically in a defensive guard. And then you have all these dudes: Trey White, 6'7". God damn it, I did the thing.
I just
it's everywhere.
leave it in there.
Yep.
Leave it in there.
Oh, of course I'm gonna leave it in there. I can't take it out. But I mean, Rosario's 6'4", 6'5". Jaden Dawson 6'4", 6'5". Flory Badunga is a 7-footer. Bryson Tiller 6'10", 6'11". Peterson 6'5" himself. You have all these dudes, all this length, all this athleticism. Torvik has Kansas in the preseason as the fifth most, as projected to be the fifth best defensive team in the country per efficiency numbers. Ken Pom has him 10th. I think Kansas has all the pieces to be a legit, typical elite Bill Self defensive basketball team. And when you look at Louisville, all the things that we think they're going to be able to do on the offensive end with Mikel Brown, with Conwell, with all the guards, with all the spacing that Louisville wants to play with, the whole idea is, especially if you put Ali Khalifa in there in the center spot, or Frew in there as a kind of a lob threat type guy, you have all these guys that are all proven shooters, that are all threats to pass, shoot, or dribble the ball. The only way you can kind of combat that defensively is if you have the athleticism and the length to kind of be able to stay in front of guys, keep you from beating you off the dribble. Kansas has that potential, which provides a unique early test for Louisville to see, okay, how in tune are they with Pat Kelsey's offense? Because Pat Kelsey, as we saw last year, is great at scheming things up, not having to rely on just being able to out-athlete guys. This is a great test of how far along is this team to understanding Pat Kelsey's system, being able to run a lot of the actions that he wants to run, because you're not just going to be able to roll the ball out and be able to just beat guys off the dribble without the movement and the spacing and the pace that Pat Kelsey wants to have.
Well, yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the continuity standpoint of bringing back some core pieces that you won. Javon had. I know Casem Prior was injured, but even Kenai Ruse that I think is kind of flying under the radar.
I think he's going to take a big jump this year.
I do too, and I'm glad. I kind of want to go through the roster and see some of the pieces that you have questions about, what you want to know about at their previous stops on that. But I mean, that's probably my biggest takeaway from just looking into this upcoming game is that how far along is this team in terms of the chemistry? And look, I mean, you did it last year too with Chucky Hepburn and Rain Smith, but there were some core pieces at College of Charleston that knew what Pat Kelsey wanted. So, I mean, that's probably my biggest question marks from that. But you're going to get a test and to see how far along, Ali Khalifa is and somebody like Kobe Rogers. I haven't seen anything about him, but by all accounts, I hear that he is an elite defender. And Luke Hancock's been around these offices and he's been very impressed with him. He's like, nobody's talking about this guy. And defensively, he's been something that I think is showing a lot of growth on that. So you have that, the Casem Prior component. I know he's still out. What does that look like moving forward throughout that? And quite frankly, like what we talked about last year with what transpired earlier in the season against the SEC teams, and can you change that narrative with this roster or makeup? Like you got the hype behind you now. Like last year was just kind of, getting Chucky Hepburn and bringing the pieces from College of Charleston was definitely something that I think a lot of people gravitate toward. You could see the style of play, like even though they weren't winning, it's like, okay, I see what they're doing here. It's competent. It's a competent basketball coach. And that's what I'm curious to see. Now, year two, expectations, targets on your back, projected to finish second in the ACC, getting the hype with the first and second team ACC teams and these new pieces. How do they fit and how do they play together is definitely something I want to see against Kansas on Friday night.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch because, Kansas can throw out Peterson, can throw out Marco Jackson, has all these guys that are proven enough it's a Trey White revenge game of sorts. He's going to be in the rotation, if not starting for Kansas as well. Jaden Dawson has length. Rosario has length. All these dudes are long, athletic, and really good defenders. So how does Louisville deal with that? I think is the huge question mark on Friday on the offensive side of the ball because I think this has the potential. As I said, I think they're the best backcourt in the country, and they have the potential to be a top 2, 3 offense in the country. We're going to see how far along they are and how much far they have to go. You're not a finished product, especially on October 24th. But at the same time, because of what you went through last year, as you noted, Phil, you're going to have to do a lot of your work in the non-conference because, yes, we do think the ACC is going to be better. Yes, Duke is still going to be really, really good. I think NC State with full weight, they've assembled a really talented roster. Virginia, I think, low-key is going to be a good team. The league's going to be better this year, but it's still, I don't think it's going to be what we're used to with the ACC. It's not 2019 where you have, a Louisville team that was the number one team in the country for parts of the year the next year with Jordan Nwora, Enoch, Dwayne Sutton, all those dudes being seventh in the ACC because you have Zion and Duke and
Right.
Kobe White and Carolina and all these teams rolling. Virginia obviously winning the title that year, 3-1 seeds. I don't think the ACC's back to that. Top with Duke, Louisville, NC State, I think is a really good top three. The depth may not be there, so it's can you get some of these games against Kentucky, going to Tennessee? You have the Cincinnatis, the Memphises, the Indianas on the schedule. You're gonna have to win some of these games to help you out in the non-conference, and I think this Kansas game is a great way to let you know where you're at, as opposed to last year where you found out where you were at very quickly when you kind of got smacked in the face against Tennessee. And I don't expect Louisville to get smacked in the face in the same way that Tennessee did to them last year, because as you said, this is a much more talented team, and I think they're more prepared for that first test than they were a year ago.
When you went down, when you went to go visit Scotty D at some of the games down in the ATL in Kennesaw State, what do you know about Woolley? Because that's a name that was he the games you attended, was he playing on those teams
Yeah,
when
so
they
I
were down?
saw him against Rutgers last year.
Because I've heard
Yeah.
really good things about him. Like he shouldn't, like, you see Kennesaw State and some people kind of roll their eyes, but it's like, no, he's the real. That's a name that keeps popping up as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I saw him. I think the most notable one is when they played Rutgers last
Okay,
year, because Rutgers was, not a good basketball team. We know that,
had some
but
high draft picks, but yeah, but
yeah,
still,
but that's the thing. You're playing against Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, and what made Kennesaw State so good in that game was their defensive pressure, forcing a lot of turnovers, making them uncomfortable. And Woolley was a huge part of that. Being able to, not be phased by guys that went in the top 5 of the NBA draft, meeting that head on, I think is something that's really valuable to have. You're going to go into a game, they're going to be playing Caden Boozer, and he's not going to be scared of Caden Boozer. He's not going to be scared of, they're going to play Nate Ahmed in Tennessee. The highly rated freshman thing, Darryn Peterson, obviously on Friday, he's been through that before at Kennesaw State, which is, a sentence to say, but Rutgers scheduled that game at Kennesaw State, so we were
right.
able to see that to where, I want to say he was in double figures that game. He hit some shots, he made some plays. He's a dude that has a lot of potential. He's become a little bit. You said Kobe Rogers, the forgotten guy. I think Woolley's been kind of the forgotten guy for me because of how much spotlight Mikel Brown and Conwell, especially, and McNeely being a sharpshooter, have really gotten, all the headlines. I feel like Woolley's a dude that's going to come in. He's probably not going to start, but he could be a six man, give you a bunch of energy off the bench, give you some burst scoring, and be a pest on the defensive end as well. I think he's going to be a great fit for this team, and someone who, may not be in the NBA after this year, but could be a really good 2-year, multi-year guy as well to continue developing and really be the star on next year's team. Not to say he can't have big moments this year too. I think that is definitely, possible as well.
No, I thought of you and it was like, oh yeah, so you came from there. I was like, yeah, I know. I was watching ESPN Plus with Bellerman one game, and you were just like right behind the bench for a game. And I know it's been a couple of years ago, but I was like, oh, if I know
Yeah,
Jack,
Wooly
he's
was
attended those games.
the famous, or I guess infamous is the better word for it, a photo of me and my buddy behind the bench going nuts when Bellerman hit the buzzer beater. That was actually 2 years ago. So that was before
Okay,
Wooly was
okay,
on
so
campus.
that makes sense. But I
Yeah, but
I,
I
I
did
know how
make
you
it.
operate. You,
Yeah,
if there's a
Bellerman.
college basketball game within the driving vicinity, you're going to it.
I was at the Georgia State Georgia exhibition game
You have an
last
illness.
week.
You have an
Hey,
absolute illness. It's a good
Georgia State
illness.
almost won that game. It was, I mean, to be fair, that one was quite literally a 5 minute drive from my apartment because it was at Georgia State. Like, come on, I wasn't gonna
I,
miss that.
I,
I was,
I know
I
how
was
you.
all for yeah.
I know how you operate.
Georgia almost blew that game too. Georgia State had a three in the air to tie the game with 3 seconds left that went in and out. In a game Georgia led by 19.
That's
And
crazy.
and I don't know how much any of this actually matters because it's mid-October. So much is going to change. And we've seen this thing where you try to overreact to exhibitions. We saw it with, I think the most notable one is Arkansas 2 years ago beating Purdue, who went to the national title game with Zach Edey and was clearly the second best team in the country behind a UConn juggernaut in a lot of years. That Purdue team wins a national championship. They lost to an Arkansas team that won 10 games
Yeah.
on the road. I mean, last year, Indiana, another game that I was, this shows how much of a sicko I am. I drove to Knoxville, Tennessee for an exhibition between Indiana and Tennessee, and Indiana beat Tennessee and then fired its coach at the end of the year after missing the tournament, and Tennessee was in the Elite Eight. So I don't know how much these games actually matter. And,
Right.
and, and so we're sitting here, we're breaking down all these things, but just even this year, Cincinnati went into Ann Arbor and beat Michigan. Do we think Cincinnati's going to be a top 15 team? Probably not. Michigan's a team we have in the top 10 most places, wherever you look. I just don't know how much this stuff matters. I mean, Houston, who is going to be my preseason national championship pick, fell to Chris Beard at Ole Miss. Iowa State, who's a top 15 in the country, lost at Creighton. St. John's was trailing at half against Townsend. I just don't know what to do with this information.
Yeah, and it's more publicized now. I mean, obviously, some of these are behind closed doors, but I mean, Louisville, Kansas being on the ACC network now on Friday night, like there's going to be more eyeballs on this. And I know Rosting and company sometimes do the YouTube feeds that are out there. But yeah, no, I'm with you. It's like either one way or another, win or lose, there's going to be a ton of opinions about the small sample size of data that we have, especially when the amount of talent that you've seen on paper for both sides, Louisville and Kansas, is going to be out there. Now, I know our buddy Ethan Moore over at Louisville Sports Live, he retweeted this the other day, and I wanted to get your thoughts about because you alluded to Isaac McNeely in Virginia. Obviously, a lot of Louisville fans saw him too, but EvanMaya.com put him as the top projected three-point shooters in the country out there. So Evan Maya had player projections predict three-point percentage this season against overall average opponent adjusted for usage. Isaac McNeely coming in at number one. There's also another Louisville Cardinal on there, and that is Ryan Conwell coming on there. I don't know how much. I mean, obviously, I was able to see a decent amount of Isaac McNeely. You get Ryan Conwell, the transfer from Xavier. How much do you know about him? I feel like I've kind of went down the wormhole of that, but what are your expectations for those two players
And
there?
we'll start with McNeely. I mean, I think he's just going to plug into that Rain Smith role that we saw Rain play brilliantly last year, to where I think in a lot of they're going to run a lot of stuff to get him open, and because of all the other weapons Louisville has, you just can't go all out and try to take McNeely away because you're just going to give up layups to Brown or Conwell or Woolley or all the other dudes that can just beat you off the dribble. But I think you're going to see him used a lot in ATO situations. We saw how well Pat Kelsey was able to draw up at least once or twice a game. It felt like they would draw in and out of bounds situation. They would get a play drawn for Rain Smith to get a wide open three. I don't know if McNeely will hit 10, 12 threes, whatever it was that Rain Smith hit in the game, but the possibility's there. He's a dead eye shooter. And yeah, I'm not surprised at all to see Evan Miyakawa, God, I butchered his name. It's so bad. I use that site all the time. It's such a good site.
That's why I didn't commit to it. And I was just EvanMaya.com.
Yeah,
That's what I did. I was like,
EvanMaya.com. Yes.
yeah,
Smart.
or you just
Yes.
power through and bulldoze through. But
Yes,
everyone knows what you're talking about. Great website.
But I'm not surprised at all to see him at that spot because he's a great proven shooter going into a system that matches perfectly what he wants to do and what Louisville wants out of him. So it makes a lot of sense. Conwell's a dude that we've seen both at the Indiana State level and in the Big East at Xavier. I mean, you look at Xavier's on and off efficiency stats when he was on and off the court last year. They went from being like a top 15 team to like a top 60 team when he's on the court versus off the court. And I'd say they were an NCAA tournament team. They were a first four team. I'm trying to remember if they actually beat Texas. Yes, they did beat Texas and they lost to Illinois. And what was an incredible first four game, which is not something you hear very often with the first four. But Conwell's a dude that I think is going to complement Mikel Brown really, really well because he's a guy that, one, is good with the ball in his hands, with the ball out of his hands. We've seen him be able to be an effective player in both instances. He can catch and shoot three. I mean, we remember what he did in Indiana State with Josh Hurts 2 years ago when they're running all of their offense through Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Um, and and he's able to play off of a big man in the same way that you can see pretty similar to what they can do with Ali Khalifa this year. But you look at Conwell and you go, okay, he doesn't need the ball in his hands, but if you need him to be able to drive and initiate offense himself, he's elite at doing that as well. So he's comfortable wherever you play him offensively, and that's something with all the other guards Louisville has, because Mikel Brown's going to have the ball in his hands a bunch. You couldn't ask for anything more for that. I think how Pat Kelsey attacked the portal this year with the backcourt, you could not have scripted it any better to see fit on paper. Well, it has to actually execute and play out throughout the course of the season, but on paper, I don't think you could draw it up any better for how these guys fit together in the backcourt.
Well, and it's funny. I mean, you talked about how deep this roster is. That was probably my biggest takeaway from the standpoint of what the makeup of this roster looks like. It's like, that's a very deep bench in a day and age in which the portal is always there. Like, that's a lot of mouths to feed per se, and managing egos and people that want to get on the court. So we can dive in on the tail end of this. I want to kind of talk about the G League stuff and the recruiting at the tail end too. I'm not recruiting.
I know nothing about the recruitment.
Well, but
I'm going to be
just
completely honest. I don't even remember his name.
Yeah, no, I think it's just more telling. It's like the G League component. He was initially committed to Chris Mack, which is just crazy.
Which is
that's
hilarious.
out there. It's just 2 coaches ago. But so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But I had a question to you, but about one of the things that I think people hear locally, and yes, you're right. Mikel Brown's getting all the hype, and I think rightfully so. When you got I don't know how much you follow like social media trends and whatnot, but they had Lethal Shooter in the practice facility. Are you familiar who was
No.
Lethal Shooter? Okay, so this guy has a deal with like Red Bull, and he goes around the country and just does like the craziest trick shots. He like shoots he shoots all this content around Mark Cuban. He goes to his house and teaches him how to shoot. He teaches like all these celebrities how to shoot. Well, he's doing drills with Mikel Brown in the Keeper facility on campus. Like I can't. I'll send you his stuff after. Like he's going to like the Hoover Dam and shooting basketballs. It's like Dude Perfect meets, a great. Anyways, I say that from the standpoint of it's so crazy to me with what has transpired and getting a guy in the social media world, and you got a McDonald's All-American. The national media, by all accounts, loves the guy. And, Pat Kelsey's leaning into the expectations for what he's able to do. And I feel like, some of the shiny toys from the previous years that helped to your success last year are kind of flying under the radar, because if this guy's going to be a top, 6, 7, 8 pick in Mikel Brown, I mean, I think like the ball is going to be in his hands a lot. And that's a big task for a freshman to do that. But it seems like the coaching staff, the teams, like they're leaning into it, was kind of my theme and takeaway when I was at a media day last week. And I was like, okay, like, it's like a quiet confidence around this, but like that's something that I think people are really leaning into with Mikel Brown, is like, look, he's the real deal and we go as he goes. And that's just so crazy for me, especially here in this market with, the tempering of expectations with Rick Pitino. And it seems like they're leaning into this, especially with the freshman. You have and both ways can work, but they're leaning into like the hype with him. And that's something that I've taken away over the course of the summer in the last few weeks.
Right. I mean, he's the high-end NBA talent. You look at teams that have won the national championship. I forget how many years it goes back, but it's been a good at bare minimum decade, 15 years since a team won. I think 2010 Duke might have been the last one that won a national championship that didn't have a first round NBA draft pick.
That's crazy.
I mean, so yes, there's a lot of ways to do this, but the common denominator, whether you're going through the portal, whether you're developing homegrown guys, whether you're getting McDonald's All-Americans, if you want to win a national championship, which that is Louisville's stated goal, you have to have a dude that's going to be in the first round of an NBA draft. And it may not be, the year that it could be a first round of any years. Is like I know, like when Louisville won, for example, in 2013, Gorgie, I guess he was a first round pick that year. But you have to have a first round NBA draft pick somewhere on the roster. It's you have to have that elite talent and to get you over the top is kind of the theory, and it can come in various different ways. We've seen it with freshmen with either a Jaleel Okafor or an Anthony Davis. We've seen it with homegrown guys like a Jalen Brunson. We've seen it with transfers like a Gerard Butler or a Walter Clayton. It comes in very different ways, but you have to have it in some way, shape, or form. And Louisville's banking on Mikel Brown being that guy that when you get into March, that yes, you have all this experience in other positions and really, really good talented players. I'm not trying to downplay Conwell or Hadley or Woolley or anyone else. But at the end of the day, Mikel Brown's the dude that's expected to have the 10-year NBA career.
Yeah. Yeah.
That does make a difference to have that dude on your roster.
No, and I'm with you. And I think, some of the hype everyone wants to play with the card tape that's sent out there and the behind the scenes, the Cardinal commitment, and everyone wants to kind of splice together, who's looking good on these things. The question to me is the bigs, losing James Scott and him going to Ole Miss, and what is that going to look like when he was such a lob threat? I know you got Sananda Fruit, I know you got Zugris, I know you got a plethora of Ali Khalifa who's coming off injury, Casem Prior. You don't know when that's going to be back there. That's probably the biggest question mark for me. The guard play, like I'm with you. I think you're good there. It's just you've seen glimpses of sustained success at times, like even somebody undersized like Javon Hadley. I think he is a very good college basketball player. I think Kenai Ruse is a very good, and I think he's going to take a leap. We were talking about people flying under the radar. He's going to take a leap. But it's the other bigs that I just don't know much about in terms of, other than like, the highlights are out there and going back and watching some of their film. I just, how is that going to mesh? Like, is the, playing overseas component, is that
Right.
going to be
We
just
don't
don't know.
And we'll see. And to be fair, we're going to get a really great first look at that on Friday because Kansas, while they're not a perfect team, they're going to throw Flory Badunga out there, who is an elite lob threat, elite around the rim, and a really, really great defensive big man, and a really great shot blocker as well. So I'm really fascinated to see how Louisville's bigs are able to match up with him, and Bryson Tiller as well, who's a former 5-star recruit who came over early last year to practice with Kansas and then had an ankle issue, so he didn't really get to do that. So he's coming back off of injury a little bit. I'm intrigued to see if Kansas goes small with someone like a Trey White at the 4, or if they go big more often with Tiller and Flory. But either way, going up against those two guys, how Louisville handles that, I think is going to be really interesting to watch on Friday because, yeah, that's the question mark of this team. The backcourt on paper is, I'm going to say it again, I think they have the best backcourt in the country. Can the front court do their job enough to be able, but with all those guys we've been mentioning, can they be good enough to where that's not a liability? And I think that is probably the question going into the season of, is this a top 20-ish team or a top 5 team that has a chance to make a Final Four? And if the cards break right, can win a national championship?
It's not going down like that. Right. I tried to do a terrible. Oh, you said right. That's great. That was right. You talked about Bryson Tiller. I tried to do something punny because he's from Louisville. Yeah. It's from the Paul. You don't have kids yet. You're not watching it, but that's a big saga there. But you're like, right. You agreed with me, so I could have just let it go, and people would have been on the internet. That's a great Bryson Tiller drop right there. But no, I'm with you. You hit the nail on the head with the bigs and some of the components that I think a lot of people are having cautious optimism about because on paper with Sananda is a pro. Zugris was a pro. Ali Khalifa has been deemed like one of the best passing big men in the sport, according to
he's not. I'm sorry, he's not Jokic. No one's Jokic, but
Hey, look, speak it into
uh,
existence, damn it. That's what this coaching staff tried
well,
to do
like
between
the
PGU and that.
the thing I keep saying about Ali Khalifa is because I'm if Louisville fans didn't watch a lot of BYU basketball 2 years ago, because one, it was the Kenny Payne era still, that basketball hurt some people, I'm sure,
Hey,
at
you
that
brought
point.
him up
But
before me. I just wanted for the record. I said
hey,
I'm looking forward. You brought him up before me. I
Kenny
want
Payne
the
won those games, damn it. Um, but but if you look at how Mark Pope used Amari Williams last year, especially when Lamont Butler had his injuries and Kentucky didn't have a point guard. But even before that, Mark Pope loves to use his big guy as a way to initiate offense, to invert his offense, to run a lot of their stuff through their five man. He did that with Ali Khalifa 2 years ago with BYU. And while Khalifa isn't as athletic as an Amari Williams, he also doesn't turn the ball over 5 times a game like Amari Williams was prone to do. Um, he makes such good decisions on the perimeter, and he can shoot the ball. I know his numbers weren't off the chart insane because he didn't play a lot of minutes. He struggled with foul trouble on the defensive end, and the hope is that because he's made kind of this transformation physically, he's going to be better on that end of the floor as well. But what you can do with him on the offensive end is so unlike what so many other big men do. And I think there's so much potential there to roll a lineup out of you can pick anyone from the backcourt, but for this case, we'll say Brown, um, Conwell, McNeely, Hadley, and Khalifa, to where you can run the offense through Khalifa and have all of these dudes that are 3 point shooters, cutting, doing all this off ball action, doing all this stuff. That Khalifa as the five man can be the passer and be able to put the ball where it needs to go, make the right decisions, is so different for a defense to face from what they're used to. I think is something that is incredibly unique and I think can be really effective for Louisville.
Well, and I'm curious too. I mean, I know we've brought him up a couple times, but like you've mentioned a good amount of bigs that are going to be involved in this rotation. Like I'm curious. I'm not saying that they can't do it. I'm just curious of how like someone like Casem Prior is going to fit into this when he does get healthy. Because there was glimpses last time, obviously down in the Bahamas or Atlantis, whenever they were playing. It's like again, he was getting his shots, but and it is small sample sizes, but the flow of the game at times was a you know what I'm trying to,
The
you're
ball
nodding your
would
head in
stick
agreement.
in his hands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that was the beauty of Pat Kelsey's offense last year was that, you know, the movement, the constant movement, they had a game plan with that. So I'm curious just personally how that will fit as he gets back from injury too, with some of the bigs and him kind of being that stretched four over there. Like, what does that look like for him and meshing him back into the rotation?
Right. He needs to prove he can hit some shots from behind the arc also, because he was something like what, 5 of 31 or something. Small, not a lot of games, but he was chucking a lot of them and not making.
He had the green light. Yes, he had
and
the.
everyone has the green light. I'm fine with having the green light, but I think Casey Pryor's role is going to be significantly different than what we saw last year because
And remember that was kind of a bizarre, like, does he need to make an announcement that he's coming back? Like, I don't know if we did the
yeah.
pod or if it was one of the shows here, but I was like, in this day and age, do you have to do that to say you're coming back? And everyone was questioning, and he put out all these cryptic things. So that's where it's like, I kind of had to check myself. I was like, do you got to put something out there? Or are you just anticipating that they're coming out? Or is that just a year by year thing? And I was like, I guess he's coming back. And then he did this big unveil that he was coming back.
And I don't want this to be taken the wrong way because I truly do believe the best possible version of Louisville last season would have been with Casem Prior and him figuring some of that stuff out, because what he brought, especially on the defensive end, the aggressiveness when blitzing screens, being able to defend multiple positions, as great of a rebounder as he was, there's a lot of intangibles that he brings to the table that can be incredibly helpful for you as a basketball team. And yes, Louisville took the dip right after he got injured, but in the long term, there were some, to be completely honest, there was some addition by subtraction on the offensive end and as a team rebounding that where, yes, Pryor was by far your best individual rebounder, but there was almost a come to Jesus moment of, oh crap, we can't rely on him to grab every rebound. We have to become a better rebounding
Noah
team.
Waterman. Noah Waterman was like massive. Yeah, helping.
And they went from being one of the worst rebounding teams in the country when Pryor was healthy to being a top 20, 30 team rebounding wise in the country, despite having all these inherent issues size wise. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't have become a better rebounding team with Prior. That was just kind of the alarm that woke them up. But the issue is more so on the offensive end. Does he play his role of moving the ball? Not everything runs through him, because this offense is going to be better when it runs through Mikel Brown, when it runs through Conwell, when it runs through Woolley, when it runs through, if you're running it through a big guy like Khalifa. Is he okay being a side piece on the offense? He's not going to be a focal point. He'll get a lot of open shots because you can't guard everyone. And I'm sure people are going to see the 3-point percentage from last year and say, he might be the one guy we can leave open. So he's going to get his chances to prove that, and he will get chances around the rim. Guys will find him when he's open because Louisville has so many willing passers. But is he okay being the guy, not the guy that's initiating as much offense and standing on the slot on the 3-point line, jab stepping and doing a little bit of a Carmelo Anthony? Because that's not what Louisville needs from him.
I'm with you. And yeah, especially what you saw when they began to figure it out in the second part of the year and they went on that long ACC win streak and playing Duke in the ACC championship. There were definitely glimpses around that, except your Georgia Tech game that you attended down in Atlanta. You were so excited you were so excited about that game. And I was like, poor Grossman gets excited to see his team down there. And then he goes to the game and that happened down there. But
I saw 2 games last year in person, and it was Georgia Tech and Ole Miss.
Common denominator. Okay, so
hey, to be fair, I'm gonna be because I have a family thing next week in Louisville, so I'll be at I think South Carolina State, whatever the heck the first regular season game is. So we're getting off the schneid then, and then I'm gonna be at the Louisville Indiana game.
Nice. Banker or not Banker's Life. It's what's it called now?
It's
Gamebridge
because
now.
Phil, because you mentioned it earlier in Miami, we're sitting here on October 21st, and I'll keep this quick. We won't go too deep down here. And Louisville and Indiana football might have the 2 best wins in the sport of college football.
Look, I mean, I had to kind of, talk down to people, and that's been a theme now with all these big jobs opening and, Sig getting extended up there. It's like, Jeff Brom, it's nice that you kind of got we're not
going down that route, but the only reason I bring that up is because in case some Louisville fans may not know, and this very well could end up being a very weird situation where it's Louisville and Indiana basketball, 2 titans in the sport, and that just ends up being the undercard for the ACC football title game, the Big Ten football title game. But if Indiana makes the Big Ten title game, that's also an Indy in the same day.
Oh, as the Indiana, the IU. Oh my goodness, dude! I think your chances of that are like really good. That would be the Grossman special.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my, because IU. Sorry, real quick. IU's already beat Oregon. What's the rest of their schedule look like? I had this up because I said for the longest time I've said they're the Jeff Fisher of college football, and they're constantly going to go 8-8, and or 6-6 for the sake of that. But it's like I can't do that bit anymore. So
the rest of their schedule is UCLA at home, at Maryland, at Penn State, Wisconsin at home, at Purdue.
Oh, dude, Grossman, you're sitting. I mean, the Grossman, that could be a Grossman utopia day. Wow. I
had already planned out because I knew I made the mistake when Louisville and IU played in football in Lucas Oil Stadium a couple years ago. I didn't take off work. I didn't go to the game because I was like, well, they have 2 more years left in the football series. If I have to miss one of them, it would be the neutral site one. I want to go to the ones on campus. Then, of course, they, that gets canceled. But so as soon as I saw Louisville, Indiana basketball, I was like, okay, I'm putting in the PTO. I'm booking my flights. This is going to happen. And for that to happen also, especially because you look at it, the Louisville IU basketball game's at 2:00, and then the Big Ten,
8:00.
Yep.
Yeah, 7:30, 8:00, because it goes right up against the ACC championship. Yep. So you'll have the SEC at 3:30. You'll have the Big 12 at noon. Dude, Grossman, you're sitting in 2 o'clock.
Indianapolis is going to be. Indianapolis might be on fire on December 6th between those 2 events.
Don't get your Mark Sanchez on. Just be safe.
Yeah, kidding. But yeah. That might be a legendary.
Dude, Grossman, 2 words. Well, 1 word. Moderation. That's all I'll say for you when you're there. Moderation, my friend. All right. So real quick before we get out of here.
I want to bring up one more thing about the
Okay.
Kansas game.
Okay, yeah, but I want to hear who is your projected starting five, and are you taking anything if what you see that rolls out is that going to be the concrete starting five, or do you think that's going to be tinkered with? What are your expectations for that?
My guess is that it would be tinkered with just because you have so many pieces, and also Prior coming back. How does that play into it as well? But if I had, I'll put it this way: I'm going to bring out a Patinoism. It's not more about the starting five; it's who you're closing with. And I think their closing lineup will be, like I said earlier, Brown, Conwell, McNeely, Hadley, and then maybe doing some offense defense between Khalifa and Frew is where
Okay,
I'm at.
so yeah, and I man, it's just so funny to me in this day and age of appeasing egos, like of how much of that's going to be tinkered with and how much of that's going to find that right. Because look, I think we're in agreement. Mikel Brown's not coming here without a starting position. I think there's some other pieces too, especially with the pros and somebody like Sanande Furu that I think Diener had on here locally, had the agent on to talk about how everything came to be and getting those individuals, to buy in. And, I mean, there were some folks, Sanande Furu said that he was supposed to be on his national team too. So managing those egos and, not everybody's a Luke Hancock where he's going to be okay coming off the bench for that. That's going to be the fascinating piece to me as they try to tinker with these lineups. But I tend to be in agreement with you. I tend, just because Ali Khalifa has been in the system over there. I'm curious how somebody like Kobe Rogers too, and maybe he's okay with that and kind of the culture, because I just keep hearing his name, but I tend to agree.
I just don't
with
know.
you.
I just don't know where the playing time comes for him.
I know. Same. I'm with you. And sometimes those pieces are needed, but I think I agree with you. Everybody 1 through 4, it's like the 5 spots that's going to be fascinating me, especially with Casem Prior trying to come back in the mix. And look, I mean, we've said it over and over again. Get your bingo card out. I feel like Kenai Roos is flying under the radar too, and he had a stellar freshman year, and didn't show up on the box score a lot of times.
Yeah. All right, there's 2 more things I want to get to. Then I'll let you. If you got to go, Phil, just
no, you're good. You're good. You're good.
All right, both involving the Kansas game. Number 1, I think Louisville. Whereas we talked about leading off the show how interesting this is for Louisville on an offensive end, getting this test for Kansas, how good defensively I think they can be. The Jayhawks on that end of the floor. I think Louisville defensively has a pretty scripted game plan here to how they can win this game if they're, actually trying to game plan and do everything that you want to do, throw all your bullets out there. You look at Kansas's roster, and yes, they flipped a bunch of stuff, but the big question mark is, could they go in and get more shooting? And I don't really think they did that around Darryn Peterson to the point to where they would want to be, kind of the Bill Self typical top 5, top 10 national championship contender. I think Louisville could be able to just pack it in and see if Kansas, guys like Melvin Council, were 29% from 3 last year. Even Cole Rosario, who's 41%, but just on 29 attempts. Trey White's a career 30% three-point shooter. Jaden Dawson is kind of the most proven shooter, 36%. But Elmarco Jackson, 26% 2 years ago, coming off an injury, not known as a shooter. Samus Caldron, who's a Brazilian freshman, not known as a shooter. Flory, Bryson Tiller aren't shooters, especially Flory is not a 3-point shooter. How Kansas shooting the ball, I think, is going to dictate if they can keep up with Louisville's firepower on the offensive end, because I really do think Louisville should have an edge on that end of the floor of, can Kansas hit enough 3-pointers to stretch Louisville's defense out, make them respect it, and put them in a point to where they can keep up with again, how much firepower Louisville has on the offensive end.
Yeah, no, and I think just on paper we just kind of gravitate to, and it was my problem with college football in this day and age of a Nick Saban's analysis around on College Game Day was picking the LSU Vandy game, and it was well, I got to pick with LSU because Vandy's always been Vandy. I feel like we do that a lot with the Kansases of the world,
right?
And just a lot of times on paper you just kind of gravitate toward, okay, Kansas is always going to be Kansas, and it's well, that's not always the way it is right there, and trying to get everything to mesh.
And Kansas hasn't been Kansas the last couple of years. That's why they have 10. That's why they have 10 new players on the roster.
And let's not forget, they had a massive billionaire, yes, billion with a B, drop a crazy amount of money. I think it was like 300 million. And it was like, figure it out, go with it, and buy yourself, whether it be football or basketball, whatever you need for that. So obviously they're doing that. We've seen locally with some recruiting wars with Louisville, Kentucky, and Kansas being involved with that. So no, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Is just the offensive firepower that Louisville has on paper, and although Evan Maya is putting out there about that, I'm fascinated to see how that meshes together in this Friday night. And it's not going to be the finished product, as we know, but I think it's like you're going to get your first glimpse at somebody like Mikel Brown. You're going to see what Isaac McNeely can do, because I remember like when he was initially coming up, and his name was being mentioned, I was kind of like, you saw glimpses of it, but I think he'd had a quote at Media Day saying, the reason that Kelsey really gravitated toward him, he was like, I'm going to unleash you, almost implying that he was, in fact, held back at Virginia. And I know our friend Lachlan McLean had some strong opinions about that. So, that's something that I'm going to monitor, because if you alluded to it, it's like if he's going to fill the void of that Rain Smith had the ultimate green light. And I think Louisville fans were shocked when he missed it. Is it going to translate to what he's been able to do and kind of pluck that hole right there?
Which I think what Locke was angry about was that he took it as, okay, McNeely's going to be trying to beat people off the dribble, create his own offense, all that stuff. Whereas Virginia, he was just a shooter. No, I still think his role is going to be pure catch and shoot guy. But I think what Pat, Kelsey, McNeely are referring to is more so with the pace and the spacing and the opportunities. He's going to get a lot more looks just because of pure pace and volume of possessions. And also he's going to get a lot better looks because not everyone's going to be able to key in on him the same way they did at Virginia. But the other thing I want to say, though, we're sitting here again. Louisville plays Kansas on Friday. Kentucky plays Purdue on Friday. St. John's plays Michigan in Madison Square Garden this weekend. Hell, Indiana plays Baylor this weekend.
It did break my heart to interject real quick.
Yep.
Rick Pitino begging for he's like, we only sold 10,000 tickets for this game in Madison Square Garden.
But no, that goes back to this though. Like, I love these games. I love that we're sitting here in October and we're getting all these big time matchups. But at what point are we like, this is incredible, but can we have Mikel Brown v. Darryn Peterson actually count?
I know.
And can we have Braden Smith and Purdue going into Lexington actually count? Like I know this is litmus test and all that stuff. What does this actually mean? But at the end of the day, these are opportunities that you could have. And I'm not saying Louisville and Kentucky and all these schools aren't going out and challenging themselves in the non-conference. UofL clearly is, of all the teams we've listed off earlier. Kentucky clearly is with all the gauntlet. They have the Champions Classic with Louisville, with St. John's, and all that stuff. Purdue has a gauntlet of a non-conference. They go down to Alabama in a couple weeks, and all that. But at the end of the day, these are some of the best matchups of the season, and they're games that don't count.
And it's kind of, I mean, as great as it is that are on ACC Network, it does feel in a lot of ways that, it's hidden a little bit.
Right. Have the Stones to go out and play Kansas in a game that actually matters, to where if you get that win, that's something you can stick in your back pocket for the rest of the year and say, we beat Kansas. That's a quad one win. That will help us on Selection Sunday. Not saying that playing this game doesn't help you get better as a team. It does, but have something tangible, quantifiable that you can stick in your back pocket. If you lose the game, who the hell cares? You have 6 other tough games in the non-conference anyways. You can win any of those. It just comes off, and I'm not making this personal about Pat Kelsey or Mark Pope or Bill Self, because everyone's doing it. But at the end of the day, if this is so exciting, but it just doesn't matter. And can we get Louisville and Kansas on the hardwood and have them go to Fog Island Fieldhouse and not give the qualifier? Yes, you should go to Fog Island Fieldhouse, even though it's an exhibition. Yes, if you're a Purdue fan, you should go to Rupp Arena, even though it's an exhibition. Yes, if you're a Kansas fan, you should go to the Yum Center. You know why only 10,000 seats have sold for that St. John's Michigan game? Because the game doesn't fucking count.
Look at you. Look at you letting your hair down on YouTube. I'm proud of you, Jack Gross. But I know if I decide to regurgitate this on the Sunday show and do the double dip, noted that I will edit that part out. But the government shut down the FCC. No, but you're 100% right in terms of just I want this to happen. I know our mutual friend Ethan Moore on Louisville Sports Live, we talk about it, especially with the Adidas schools and what you see with the PK tournament out in Oregon. I would love nothing more. They're already on the schedule: Louisville, Kansas, and Indiana, and another Adidas school be partake in something like that. And it doesn't even have to be that, but you understand what I'm saying. It looks like
Right.
Tennessee's trending in that direction. They've got some history. I know no Final Fours, Rick Barnes, but I'm with you. I think it feels bigger. I want to give a shout out too. I know you're a part of the Field of 68 network. Love what they're doing with the marathon, by the way. I know
Yes.
that's something that is near and dear to my heart. We're putting together something for one of our partners here at ESPN Louisville with the Louisville Kentucky game on November 11th. But there's some things that we were kind of going back for. It's like,
Good
hey,
teaser there.
yeah, look at that. So where should we watch? Should we put best of games up there with Louisville? I was like, dude, you got the opening day of college basketball, and I think on that 11th. Two is kind of feast week, so I think they're going to have some sort of, ESPN Plus games on there. But shout out to the Field of 68 guys for putting that on. I know there's some games that a lot of people are going to be excited for to tip off the sport. And now in the day and age, everybody's got
Start
one
at 8 a.m.
Yeah,
8 a.m., that's
everyone's
right.
got one of these on YouTube. You can watch it. You can listen to a podcast on there. It doesn't necessarily all have to be under the umbrella of the mothership. I know we're an ESPN affiliate, but kudos to Field of 68 for adapting and trying to figure out a unique way for people to watch their sport, because it is something that is near and dear to my heart, that it's like, I don't think the sport gets the coverage that it probably deserves. And I think the guys over there at Field of 68 are really trying to harp that and shout that from the mountaintops.
Yes, and it's something that I have absolutely nothing to do with, but I will say thank you all. I'm kidding.
You mean you didn't have anything to do with Winthrop and Queens being put together at 8 a.m.?
I would love to say I did, but I did not.
You
No,
do a little play-by-play.
Doster Goodman and all the guys on the national side did a fantastic job with that. I know I'll be watching it. I can't wait for because again I'll be in Louisville that day. Have my mom come downstairs and go, "What the hell are you doing?" And it's like,
Ma, meatloaf.
no, but she'd tell me to bleep off. It'd be great. But yeah, no, I'm happy. That's something we've talked about for years, wanting back in some way, shape, or form. The fact that Phil 68 stepping up and doing it and organizing that is fantastic. That we're going to get college basketball all day on that Monday, November 3rd, which is coming up very, very quickly. And it's going to be an absolute blast. Quick one for you before we get out of here. How's the Jaylen Lowe injury impact the Louisville, Kentucky game?
So there's been some reports that have been coming out that it's not as bad as it was. There was some, kind of pushback. It was like it was behind a paywall. They overheard something from the training staff. So it was very cryptic in terms of what the injury was. They said it's maybe a stinger, got an MRI, and looks to be in good shape for that. But of course, in this market, everyone wants to, already get ahead of it. And you know how this works. It's the age old, sports talk, sports media, the landscape of like, I'm going to one up you right there. If Louisville were to beat Kentucky does it really count? So a lot of Kentucky fans are getting out ahead of that, which is perfection in the rivalry right there. So I don't think it's as bad as it was initially feared by some with the blue-white game, but that's kind of the tone for some of the beat writers. I know John Hale. I know Mark Story's been on. I know our buddy Cam Drummond, I think, is going to be on with Strebel, so he'll do a deeper dive into that. But that was kind of the latest that I heard.
Cam's been eerily silient.
Oh, really? What's going on there? Just like he's keeping his sources close to the vest.
Yeah, just on Jaylen Lowe. Yeah, you're eerily silent on that. So I don't know if Cam knows something that
he's withholding information from Grossman. That's great. No, but that's all I know about that from some of the beat writers that have been on and all the basketball bennies down in Lexington.
Yeah, it'll be fun for sure to see what happens there, because that's going to be a blast, and that's weird that it's in less than 3 weeks. We're not diving into that today. We've covered it.
We got time.
I'll rant about that. I've ranted about that enough times. And I will do so again another time. But Phil, always appreciate the time, my man. Blast talking through it. And yeah, Louisville, Kansas, Friday night, ACC Network, 93.9 The Ville. I'll be drunk in Michigan. So yeah, we'll be back. Probably because, yeah, like I said, I have a wedding in Michigan. I don't remember if I said that before we start recording or not. But
Michigan State, you did bring that up, I think, on the recording.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to be at a wedding on Saturday night in Michigan during the Michigan State football game. So
what could possibly go wrong there?
What could possibly go wrong? Blake and Baker already breaking out the rant on that one. So that's going to be a lot of fun there. So I'm not going to be able to watch the game live, probably, unfortunately. So Lieberman and I think we're playing on something like Tuesday, Wednesday to get a breakdown of the game and be able to react to that. So Phil, always appreciate the time, man. And yeah, we'll catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, real quick. I know Coach Mark Lieberman, I think he's going to be putting out some X's and O's breakdown
Yes.
on our YouTube channel. So ESPN Louisville Plus. I know he does stuff with you guys at Field of 68. So like and subscribe there as well. He's really excited about it. I think he was actually, here earlier, kind of lurking around and kind of getting everything set up for that. So he and Luke are going to have some things in the works that we can, kind of hybrid breakdown between the Field of 68 here in ESPN Louisville. So always excited for that.
Yeah, got to be a blast. You can follow him on Twitter at Coach Lieberman, at Phil__Baker. One of these
Still
days,
working
man.
on it. One of these
One of
days.
these days.
Elon Musk,
Yep.
man, and his new Twitter.
I'm at Jack Grossman 97. This has been Floyd Street's Finest. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff I meant to say at the start of the podcast and completely forgot to. But for Phil Baker, I'm Jack Grossman. We'll